Welcome to Order Militaris Radio TV, and we are lifelong Catholics, and what we do is all for free and for our love of Jesus Christ, and for our Holy Mother, the Church, and we'll defend our Holy Mother, the Church. Today's program is going to cause a lot of people to either be upset or ask a lot of questions. And we need to ask a lot of questions because there is definite corruption within the church. And we need to ask why and how it got there. Why the heck we ain't doing nothing to clean it out. And so we welcome Brother Alexis to the program on Opus Dei in Catholic media.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on Order Militaris Radio TV. It's always a pleasure to be on this new Catholic apostolate, Breaking Horizons on free speech. And yes, if we love Holy Mother Church, we want to dedicate ourselves to defending Holy Mother Church. And that means we need to open our eyes about what's going on in the church. And we need to use at least some minimum due diligence and investigate every group out there. Where does it come from? Who's behind it? Who might be controlling it? Because you don't close all the churches in the world and demand everyone put a mask on their face and go along with it unless you have high and common treachery throughout many levels of the church. So we've been, AJ has been doing these investigations, and I've been glad to be on with you, AJ, to do this. So now we're going to tackle some big names. And where does our investigation begin? Actually, maybe we should just say, where did it begin? We noticed that some famous American was connected with some Spanish organizations. That got our curiosity going.
Yeah. One, John Henry Weston of Live Site News, which really piqued our interest when, for some reason, our internet searches decided to work one day, and we stumbled across the website for FOIA, where you can go in there and see all the FOIAs. And boy, howdy, we saw things that just made our eyes pop open.
Yeah. Now, for those of you who don't know, John Henry Weston is a Canadian who worked for a small publication in Ontario that was founded by an MI5 agent, Malcolm Muggeridge, or MI5 asset. And he had some minor role of handling the mailing list. Then he and another friend who did that started their own group, and I guess they used that mailing list. And John Henry Weston publicly claims that in his youth he left the church because he disagreed with church teaching. I don't know what church teaching would you disagree with when you're a 15 or 16-year-old young guy. And that he was an atheist for many years, studied child psychology in some, I assume, Canadian Institute. You know, we found the Canadian Institute of Psychology are like this with MK Ultra program with the CIA. And then he had his conversion to the Catholic faith, or reversion, you might say, and he wanted to found Life Site News. But somehow he ended up on the board of directors of
Citizens Go. If you don't know it, it's a very popular forum. You go and they do all these what's it called? Petitions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And for a while, Citizens Go was being used by none other than Live Site News, and all of a sudden they stopped and doing their own life petitions. And I was like, okay, what's going on here? And we stumbled across this information. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. Let's start chronologically with, so we're going to be in Spain, and we're going to be talking a lot about Spain in this program. And you might have heard of an organization called Opus Dei. That's Latin for the work of God. And that's the name of I don't know what you would call it. It's not a religious order. It's not a society of apostolic life. It's not really anything, and you'll learn. And it's founded by, I'll tell the story, AG. What is Opus Dei?
Well, Opus Dei was founded by Jose Maria Escriva, In, let's see, 1928 in Spain, during the Spanish Civil War, between one side who supported the fascists and one side who supported Franco. And, well, to be able to do what they had to do, they, well, I guess you could say, made a deal with the devil.
Yeah, so thousands of Catholic clergy are being murdered, and Franco is trying to defend them. The communists are out to murder them, and what position does Scrivà take? He takes neutrality. He doesn't take the position that defended Holy Mother Church. And before he founded Opus Dei, he lived 8 years in a rectory with a homosexual. That's public knowledge in Spain. He later said it was a mistake. I don't know why he would say a mistake unless there was something going on there. Why was he even doing that? But I guess he should have said it was a mistake, but that was an omission. So Opus Dei has been known to do a lot of strange things, but their founder, Scrivà, most people don't know. He was canonized, and there's some strange circumstances about that. I'll just point out that he's of Jewish lineage, and his friends in government got him a noble title. So the Escrivá part isn't part of his name. It's Balaguer is his real name. And would a saint do that? I don't know any saint who got his friends in politics to give him a noble title. And I personally have deep suspicions about Opus Dei because it doesn't appear to be promoting holiness in the church. Who teaches us holiness? Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ gave us the evangelical counsels of poverty, chastity, and obedience, which are not just for us religious, but for the whole world, whole Catholic world. They're counsels, so it's good advice. And if it comes from God, it's very good advice. For us religious, we consider it so good advice, we take a vow. But somehow that rubbed Jose Maria the wrong way. He thinks it is wrong. You shouldn't listen to evangelical. And he counsels all his members not to become religious and not to consecrate themselves with God and not to dedicate themselves to higher things, but to stay active in the world. So we already see here, in my opinion, the voice of Satan, because it's contradicting the voice of Christ. But what did you find, AJ, about some of their strange practices?
Well, Jose Maria prescribed. That includes mass, devotional reading, good, private prayer, good, and something that only a certain handful would do with strict supervision. Self-flagellation, with whips and chains to subdue the flesh. Everybody in Opus Dei.
They all must practice it? Okay, so now I'm going to point out something that we Franciscans know, because it is an ancient penitential practice of all who have followed Christ and seek to be holy, to mortify the flesh. And you can do that by fasting from all food, or abstaining from meat and liquor kind of drinks, or going into solitude. And some saints, in moments of great temptation, have used instruments upon their flesh to cause blood to flow, because they were trying to repel a movement of sensation. And in many religious orders who dedicate themselves to conformity with Christ crucified, these instruments are used on a regular basis, but they're used within a context of high spirituality and great detachment from the world. They're not used by people every day of the year and who aren't dedicated to that. So I don't say you should never use these things. Okay, I don't say that. But you have to understand that there's almost no point to do it all the time, because you will just destroy your health, and that's a form of suicide. And if it's not done in that context, it's like disordered. So it's kind of like saying, giving someone a marksman rifle that's used by special forces if he's never fired a pistol. Okay, and this is my one criticism, but it's not wrong to use these things in themselves, but how they must be used. And Opus Dei has a very strong thing that they actually teach their laymen to live like they're under a vow of chastity without being under one. And I've met Opus Dei men who've never married and claim to be some sort of supernumerary or like consecrated, but they're not be consecrated. Why would you not marry unless you've promised Jesus not to marry? And that's called the vow of chastity. So how could you be opposed to the vow of chastity, but telling people to be chaste and not marry? Because in the order that God has created for us, we either are chaste for the love of him and we do it by a vow, or we marry for the love of him so to raise up children. Doing neither one nor the other is well, it's doing neither one nor the other. I don't know what you'd say. It's not. It's a source of. It's certainly a state of imperfection. Yeah.
Yep. So to be able to do what they do and not be answerable to anyone except the Pope, I had to have something special done. And when I stumbled across chapter 20 of Operation Gladio, it's called Works of God. Oh, Opus Dei. And it is on Opus Dei. On May 24th, 1984, a goodwill payment of $250 million was made by the Vatican to the Ambrosiano creditors at the headquarters of the European Trade Association in Geneva. The money for the reparation came from a mysterious deposit made in the IOR by Secretary of State Casaroli in the amount of $406 million. The source of cash was Opus Dei, a deeply conservative Catholic organization that had amassed an estimated $3 billion in assets in its efforts to prop up the papacy after the damage wrought by the IOR. The organization assumed the lira debt of the patriarchal banks within the Ambrosiano group, including the Banca Cattolica del Veneto, Credita Vericino, and Ambrosiano itself, which launched an ill-fated attempt to return the financial ashes of the Nuovo Banco Ambrosiano. In exchange for these benefactions, John Paul II granted the sect recognition as a personal prelature. This status ensured that the secret society would answer only to the Pope and the Pope alone. No local bishop could discipline or sanction it. Overnight, Opus Dei emerged as a global ecclesiastical movement without a specific diocese. No organization within the history of the Roman Catholic Church, save the Society of Jesus, had been granted such power.
Now, it's one thing to be granted a special status because your members are holy and you're doing wonderful things for the church. It's quite another to buy it for $400 million. And well, we've already reported many times on how the Bank of Ambrosiano is involved in the Sicilian Mafia, the CIA, Freemasonry, and all the corruption that was going on in the Vatican Bank since '45 when the CIA got their hooks in it. And Opus Dei takes a position that made me suspect for long that the Operation Gladio movement, because they fit the characteristics of a CIA op in the post-war period. They're politically oriented. They are an organization that emphasizes control of persons. They've been accused in almost every nation of practicing mind control techniques, psychological persuasion. I have met perfectly good Catholics that once they join Opus Dei, they become robots. They stop thinking. You can't talk to them about certain things, or they just disappear out of society because they're increasingly isolated by the group. And there are websites on how to detox from Opus Dei and how to get your kids out of it. They target children for control, so they know a lot about child psychology, but not for doing good things. And I have run into Opus Dei members a long time, and if they detect that you're the kind of person who's loyal to Jesus Christ rather than to a human being, they'll steer clear of you. They know they can't recruit you, and that's not a sign of an organization that serves Jesus Christ. That's a sign of an organization that serves itself or the devil.
So, much, again from Operation Gladio, much of what is known by the sect comes from John Roche, a professor at Oxford University, who left the order and broke his pledge of secrecy in an essay titled The Inner World of Opus Dei. Roche writes, internally, it is totalitarianism, and imbued with fascist ideas turned to religious purposes, ideas which were surely drawn from Spain of its early years. It is virtually a cult in spirit, a law unto itself, totally self-centered, grudgingly accepting Roman authority because it still considers Rome orthodox.
And has anyone ever refuted his writings?
No. Now, to our listeners and watchers, we're going to need your help on this one. I can't even find the names of these organizations that Opus Dei owns. Opus Dei has become a $3 billion enterprise, controlling 600 newspapers, 52 radio and television stations, 12 film companies, and 38 news agencies. Prominent Americans who became affiliated with the movement included CIA Director William Casey, William Simon of Citicorp, Francis X. Stanchard of Chase Manhattan, and Sergeant Shriver, a former Democratic candidate for the vice president. David Kennedy of Continental Illinois, a Mormon, became conspicuous friend of the sect since his bank was lending shareholder of an Opus Dei bank in Barcelona.
And you might have heard of Dr. Taylor Marshall. He was associated with Opus Dei. You not take lightly the fact that someone was in or associated with Opus Dei. And Opus Dei is a staunch defender of Bergoglio. If anyone even starts questioning whether Bergoglio is Pope or not, and he's Opus Dei, he disappears. I remember a good friend I had out on Facebook out of Spain for some years. All of a sudden, information was coming forward that Bergoglio was perhaps uncanonically elected, and the guy disappeared. I never saw him again. I asked one of his friends what happened to him. Oh, his Opus Dei spiritual director told him that he was doing things that were destructive to his soul, and he should stop talking about that. So he was precepted to get off social media for several years. And in other words, he was placed under a mind control system, and he was told not to think about certain things. And these poor people who are so deeply psychologically manipulated, and psychological manipulation is a hallmark characteristic of a Masonic organization, or one that is ruled by Masonic principles or a higher Masonic thing. So, they're not the only Spanish organization, though, that has these question marks, are they?
No. Now we get into the CIA and Opus Dei. Because Opus Dei was vehemently anti-communist in 1971, the CIA began to funnel millions into its coffers to thwart the growth of liberation theology in Latin America. Much of this money ended up in the Chilean Institute for General Studies, the IGS, an Opus Dei think tank. The members of IGS included prominent lawyers, free market economists, and executives from influential publications. The leader of the IGS was Hernan Cubillos, founder of the Que Pasa, an Opus Dei magazine, and publisher El Mercurio, the largest newspaper in Santiago, and one that received CIA subsidies. The coup against the democratically elected regime of Salvatore Allende was planned within the corridors of the Chilean think tank. After the coup, IGS technocrats became the new cabinet members, and Cubillos emerged as a foreign minister. Throughout the 1980s, the CIA made use of Opus Dei, Milites Christi, Soldiers of Christ, as the primary force in Poland. The numeraries and supernumeraries provided ongoing support for Solidarity, which by some accounts reached nearly $1 billion by the end of the decade. Opus Dei also organized courses, seminars, conferences to indoctrinate Polish teachers, scholars, economists in the tenets of Western democracy and the plans of a unified Europe as envisioned by the Council on Foreign Relations and the Trilateral Commission in the wake of the imminent collapse of the USSR. How much money the CIA provided to Opus Dei remains a mystery. The CIA refuses to release any records regarding its relationship to the secret sect on the grounds that any disclosure would undermine national security. As plans got underway for Opus Dei to take control of the Vatican's finances in order to ward off any future debacle, the CIA was forced to bring closure to another matter, including the case of Michel Sindona, the man who knew too much.
So that was Sindona involved in the Vatican Bank affair.
Mm-hmm.
Who ended up, what happened to him? He was poisoned in his prison cell, I think, with a cup of arsenic-laced coffee.
Yep. Yeah. So, there is breaking news on this solidarity front of Opus Dei in Poland. Their hero, Cardinal Stefan Sawinski, the guy who led solidarity in Poland, is now going to be beatified.
Oh, so Bergoglio, the CIA agent, is beatifying someone who worked to promote solidarity, which was CIA op. Okay. Is this the Catholic Church anymore? Or is this the Church of the CIA?
Church of the CIA.
So let's the Citizen Go organization, to turn back where we began our story, is a Spanish organization. I always thought it was an American, because Citizen Go sounds like it has from the United States, English, but it's actually from Spain. And what's their story, and how are they involved in a CIA Iranian terrorist organization?
Yeah. So you want their founder first, or you want the organization?
Start with the founder of Citizen Go.
Yeah. Ignacio Orsuega Rato. Alrighty. He is a Spanish lawyer and ultra-Catholic campaigner who serves as president and CEO of the Spanish anti-abortion platform HATS.org, or Make Yourself Heard, and also president of the ultra-conservative Citizen Go Foundation, a petition platform active in 50 countries. He is a trained lawyer, member of the Bar Association in Madrid, his hometown, where he lives with his wife and 5 children. He was brought up in a Catholic family with his uncle being the former vice president of the Spanish government and former manager of the IMF.
IMF? The International Monetary Fund, the Masonic bank that's controlled by the Masonic banks in New York to take control of the economies of every country in the world?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So he says he had his religious calling in 91 during the pilgrimage to the city of Częstochowa in southern Poland on World Youth Day. There I became aware that Jesus Christ, the church, and faith are not only a moral code or doing good to others, but there is a person who loves me madly and wants my salvation is waiting for me in the tabernacle. He explained in an interview to the religious portal Camino Católico. Aswaga graduated in law at the Universidad Pontificia de Comillas, a private Catholic university ran by the Society of Jesus. According to the CV, he has worked for multinational companies such as Anderson and American Express. In 1998, Orsuega made his master's degrees in international law at the Fordham University, New York. That year, according to the CV, Orsuega became familiar with the American grassroots movement and studied specifically their lobbying activities and the tools they use for citizen involvement in politics in the public arena. Based on his American experience, Mr. Orsuega founded HATS hatsorg.org in 2001. And then after he launched hatsorg, the ultra-conservative platform rallying against imputed gender ideology and everything else, he created an online petition website, but over the years grew into a powerful ultra-conservative lobby. Its first person demanded from the Spanish government more efforts to support married couples and families, but over the years it extended its scope, including organization of mass rallies against abortion. According to Oswego, hatsorg has currently approximately 550,000 members who participate in its campaigns. And according to the CV, Oswego has been a professor of new technologies and citizen participation at the graduate program, Master of Political Action at the University of Francisco de Vitoria in Madrid. He was awarded a Master's of Applied Political Studies, a degree conferred by the Secretary of State of the Spanish government. In 2007, he participated as a speaker at the Symposium on E-Democracy organized by the Council of Europe in Strasbourg. It goes on and on today. You can read more about it on the show page.
Now, is he associated with Vox, the Spanish political party?
Yeah. It is through Citizens Go that they're connected. So, Citizens Go was started by the same man as Oswego in 2013. And according
you mean
to
Vox? Vox was
founded
in 2013.
No, no, Citizens Go was founded in Madrid, Spain in 2013 by hatsorg, the other organization. Yeah. It has team members located in 15 cities on 3 continents, facilitating users signing petitions in 50 countries. While its website is available in around a dozen languages, petitions filed with the platform are for a large part opposing same-sex marriage, abortion, youth euthanasia, and clear anti-feminist and anti-LGBTIQ bias. But it's not limited to petitions. It is also actively involved in local campaigns directed against abortion and decriminalization of homosexuality, particularly in Africa. It is also it also has links to the U.S. Republican training cadres, such as the Leadership Institute, among whose alumni is former U.S. Vice President Mike Pence, as well as the ultra-Catholic and ultra-conservative World Congress of Families, the annual gathering of the most notorious anti-abortion activists worldwide. Furthermore, there are tangible links to the ultra-Catholic Mexican secret society called El Unique, heavily representative of Mexico's right-wing National Action Party. Citizen Go's influence also reaches into the European Parliament, who has opposed the introduction of the Estrella Report, which requires member states to provide comprehensive sex education in schools and ensures access to safe abortions, among other things.
So let us pause here and point out that many of these things they're doing is good.
Yep.
And the author writing what he wrote is decidedly slanted in the left-wing point of view. So there's nothing wrong with an organization doing good things, okay? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's the money. It's the question of the money. So did Citizen Go found the political party Vox?
No, but here's how it works. So the support of the far-right Vox Party, Open Democracy, embarked on an undercover investigation in Spain, which uncovered intimate links between Citizen Go, hatsorg, and the far-right Spanish Vox Party. These go well beyond the public endorsement of Vox by Citizen Go president Ignacio Arzuaga, as well as has or during his inquiry. Arzuaga admitted to have met with senior party officials, discussed common strategy, and also described how Citizen Go would indirectly support Vox. So this is the quotes from the undercover reporter. Our undercover reporter specifically asked Orzuega how to get around the Spanish campaign finance law rules, donating more to Vox than the legal limit, and about doing so anonymously, which is against the law. Orzuega explained that there are no such limits on donations to groups like Citizen Go, and if you give privately to a nonprofit, there is no need to disclose that. He said Citizen Go would not channel money to Vox itself, but you could give to any foundation that does not mind to give to forward the money to Vox. That would be a good option. This is something we haven't made public or raised, as the guy said, continued. But in Spain, we're going to launch a campaign before the general election, where we are going to show bad things that have been said by the leaders of the parties that Vox is running against. For example, in favor of abortion or in favor of LGBT laws, describing since released posters and adverts against candidates from other parties. The Vox official that Arzuaga put our undercover reporter in touch with confirmed that supporting Citizen Go could help the party indirectly, describing them as independent but that we are actually currently totally aligned. He told our reporter that while there is a limit on the size of individual donations to parties, there is not a limit on the number of donors. Okay, it can be split amongst several donors, and then they only have to register their first name, last name, and origins. There are other ways of making support, he added, describing a lack of regulation in terms of equivalent of a super PAC in the United States, and those institutions, organizations that give airtime or advertising in support of causes or candidates or political parties. I understand that is outside the limitations of actual political parties, which is very, very regulated. Super PACs don't officially exist in Europe, but he said there are movements to create those. I think they are unregulated. Ignacio's organization, that's kind of that.
So they're not skirting the law because there's no law against it, and there's a lot of organizations that do this sort of thing. But Vox is very willing to take money from everyone, and they even got, I think, 900,000 euros from a Gladio organization. What's the story behind that?
So, and he goes on, Vox has been accused of shady monetary flows and unsavory political alliances. For example, Vox reportedly received donations to the tune of 800,000 euro from the extremist Iranian opposition group Mujahideen al-Kaq, or MEK, for its 2004 European election campaign. Vox Vice President Victor González Coelho de Portugal was condemned for accounting irregularities in one of his companies and has been banned for 3 years from handling party finances. Furthermore, the party has links to the controversial Francisco Franco Foundation, which glorifies Spain's former dictator, and it was Arzuaga himself who referred to the links of Vox to Franco's former fascist party, Falange. Arzuaga told the Open Democracy undercover reporter that Vox General Secretary Javier Ortega Smith, simultaneously the lawyer leading Vox's private prosecution of Catalan independence supporters, comes, I would say, from the hard right, like Falange's, Franco's movement, but nobody knows. It's kind of a private thing.
So we were very curious to see that a Spanish political party that's supposed to be pro-Catholic is getting money from an Iranian terrorist organization That was a CIA op, and we found that this group is very close to people who are close to Trump, and their stated goal is the overthrow of the Iranian government, and they are a paramilitary organization, and I think they're headquartered in Albania now, or
They are. Yeah. 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 Albania. It's a really interesting deal here. See if I can find the.
yeah. While you're looking it up, I'll just point out there's no way on this earth a CIA operation is going to give you 800,000 euro unless you are also a CIA operation. It's just not going to happen. Masons don't give money to Catholics. They only give money to Catholic organizations that have been taken over by Masons.
Yeah. It was really interesting that it was these guys took money from a good number of people, including someone she. Excuse me, folks. I'm thinking out loud here.
Yeah, we found out that Giuliani, the lawyer of Trump, actually went and gave a talk to this Islamic paramilitary organization, and that chases it out.
And also, our former governor, U.S. Senator Sam Brownback, a Republican from Kansas, and chairman of the Foreign Relations Subcommittee on South Asia, accused French of doing the Iranian government's dirty work, and they supported the MEK over the France, whatever France was doing. It was just, yeah.
I think the French were prosecuting members of the Iranian terrorist organization, that kind. So you have Citizen Go, founded by Hart's founder, whose father was on the IMS, or his uncle, IMF, which is the high-level Masonic organization. And then you have them financing a party that's also getting finances from the CIA. I hope you connect the dots here. All these groups must be Gladio, or they're controlled by the CIA or Freemasonry. They're not Catholic. And actually, a matter of fact, if you know anything about Spanish politics, you know that the party Vox in the last parliamentary elections in Spain was instrumental in giving more power to the left, because in every town where there were actually more conservatives than left wing, Vox took enough of the vote and refused to collaborate with the other two parties, so that none of these three parties won where there was actually a majority of conservatives. Instead of the more sane thing would be like, okay, you vote for us in this town, we'll vote for you in that town, and then that way the conservatives would win parliament. So conservatives actually are 65% of the Spanish electorate. They actually lost parliament because of Vox. Yeah. Vox came out of nowhere, took that vote, and I'm not saying that their platform is not Catholic. They have a very good platform against these things, but to whose profit? What end? And the new government of Spain is total scamdemic, whereas who knows what the conservative government of Spain would have been.
Yeah. And also, the year before John Bolton was hired by President Trump in 2017, he addressed members of the MEK and said that they would celebrate in Tehran before 2019. By 2018, over 4,000 MEK members had entered Albania, according to the Instat data. So, remember this dust up coming up from within the White House, and it was in the news that they had plans on bombing Iran. And it was to, well, get these guys into power.
Yeah, and so many of the terrorist attacks in Europe involve individuals who got guns or material support in Albania. And we know, and we've already explained how so-called Islamic terrorism is a CIA op for political ends.
Mm-hmm.
and they always attack at the precise moments that you need the vote to be shifted, just like a classic Gladio operation. And so these are. And how did John Weston end up on their board of directors? Since he's a Canadian working in America, how he got in contact with someone who's tied to the International Monetary Fund and the CIA? I guess he'll have to answer that if someone has the courage to ask him. And we've done a lot of reports here. Christendom College is also involved in this whole mess.
Mm-hmm.
We did a whole report on that. And how they were founded by people close to the Franco-Falang movement, and how they were founded by former CIA agents and or CIA agents, and a lot of their members go into military intelligence and or associated with military intelligence even to this day. So Christendom College, it doesn't seem to be about Christendom. It seems to be about the Masonic infiltration of Christendom.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Matt of the Remnant studied there, and he's a big Franco supporter, and has said, I think he's gone to Spain many times, but does he know what he's involved in?
Yeah. So with this, also you have the Bourbons involved with Citizen Go in their founding, in their monetary funding of Vox. And there's a police report on Opus Dei.
Oh yeah, this is really interesting. So, who wrote it? What year was it written? What countries this come from, and what happened to its authors?
Yeah. Date of the report: September 9th, 1986, by Joel van der Rijden, but it was finally translated April 8th, 2019. Finally translated.
Okay, so what? Read something about this. What does this police report contain?
Yeah. So it starts out with these quotes that, why shouldn't we sell them arms? Not weapons. Only man is good or evil. I think that weapons provided by Opus Dei or other governments serve the people. When we want certain things, we don't get them by preaching, but in different manners altogether. If people don't want to listen, then it is the same as in school. Then we have to take other measures, which they will hear. Perhaps that the fascist Fuerza Nueva, which is banned by the Spanish government, is an organization that, with the people that I came into office with helps Opus Dei fulfill certain tasks. I really have always held this idea that Opus Dei provides divine authority, which is just, and one must follow through with this authority until the end. In my opinion, Opus Dei is the government unto itself. I am also of the opinion that Opus Dei should rule over all of Europe, and people who share my view of hierarchy and discipline should join Opus Dei. I am convinced that this is the only thing that can save Europe. Opus Dei will follow President Reagan. November 13, 1984. ARD Magazine Monitor. Prince Michel de Bourbon Parma in an interview with Jürgen Roth.
So here we have a prince of Bourbon Parma, a nobleman of one of the highest levels in Europe, totally exposing Opus Dei as a Gladio organization. You can't call this man a liar, okay? If you dare call him a liar, you got to prove what you're going to say. So here we have high nobility of Europe admitting what Opus Dei is really about and what they're involved in. And here we see the same thing which is going on with Citizen Go, Hearts, and Vox Spain. And this is part of the report we already pointed out. The Gladio operations infiltrated the nobility of Europe and got the Catholic ones unwittingly or knowingly to serve the same Masonic order as the non-Catholic ones who are Bilderbergers and in Spain. And if they don't know who's controlling them, okay. But if they come to know it, they probably have egg on their face when we realize that they're really in league indirectly with the Bilderbergers and the enemies of Catholicism.
Yep.
And That's a really damn. So that's in the police report. What are some other things in this police report?
Yeah. The following report on Opus Dei was written in 1986 by waivers BOB Gendarmerie officers Gerard Baeth and Franz Balfroy. The BOB can be seen as the Belgian FBI. At the time of this report, BI and Balfour were in the process of investigating the murderous 1982 to 1985 gang the Neville robberies. They also had experience with the equally notorious Pignon child abuse affair. Starting in 1983, the two detectives increasingly began to look into infiltration of the state, especially in the army, by extreme right pro-Nazi militias, as Front de la Jeunesse in the Westernland New Post. Looking at this report on Opus Dei, their investigation tied the activities of these militia to the European and U.S. wide network involving aristocrats and nobles as Otto von Habsburg, the Italian P2 Lodge, the CIA, the Vatican, including Opus Dei in the top level, Circle Network, including its ties to the Britain-based Institute for the Study of Conflict and U.S.-based Heritage Foundation.
And what happened to these two police officers after they filed that report?
By January of 1988, they were demoted to traffic cops, handing out parking tickets.
They touched the networks of power. But that report now is a document. It's a historic document, okay? And policemen don't make up things. That's pretty interesting of a report. But they're not really saying in that report what other scholars have not said. Other scholars have confirmed all the same things. And so this is not just a conspiracy theory. This is not something that AJ and I have invented. It's all in documents, and you can read it on the show notes page, show page where AJ has linked to it. And does that round out? We have a few other points to talk with before we round up.
So we were getting everything all lined up for the show to make sure we get all the points connected and have all this stuff. We found out something about how Opus Dei was in the White House and in the Supreme Court and took it over.
So there's Opus Dei members or affiliates on the Supreme Court? Which ones?
Oh. The Trump White House wasted no time in nominating Amy Coney Barrett, devout Catholic, to the Supreme Court after RBG's passing gave this administration an unprecedented third bite at the SCOTUS apple, bearing an improbable successful challenge by Democrats. Barrett is on her way to becoming a Supreme Court justice and tipping the scale of the highest court in the land in favor of conservatives by a margin of 7-2. So and here we go. As the American media lurches forward onto the predictable spectacle that such a lopsided court will no doubt elicit from the irredeemably partisan media, it is worth shining a spotlight on the links Barrett has to an organization described by a defector as a totalitarian group imbued with fascist ideas, turned to religious purposes with deep involvement in the darkest activities of what some call the permanent or deep state. The man who said to vet the president's list of SCOTUS candidates, Leonard Leo, is executive vice president of the arch-conservative Federalist Society, which has figured in the appointment of all but one of the conservative justices currently sitting on the Supreme Court, including Trump's two other now installed nominees, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. While the Federalist Society itself has plenty of dubious relationships with individuals like Charles Koch and his network of billionaire oligarchs, hell-bent on shaping American politics to serve their ends. It is Alito's association to another organization that reveals links to far older and more powerful networks that harken back to the most recondite history of Cold War politics and the CIA and their ostensible fight against communism through an unholy alliance between the intelligence agency, the Vatican, and the mob. So, Leonard Leo is the board member of the Opus Dei Catholic Information Center, where sitting U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr and White House counsel Pat Cipollone also once served. The Catholic lay group has been described as one of the world's most powerful and politically committed secret societies with direct ties to the Vatican as a personal prelature and official status awarded by John Paul II to make sure the group was only answerable to the Pope himself. So, those people are on the Opus Dei. The guy who leads the Federalist Society, Bill Barr, and White House counsel Pat Cipollone. But there are others.
So this kind of explains why Trump went to the shrine of John Paul II, knelt down and prayed, because John Paul II worked with the CIA, and he has a group in his White House who's worked with the CIA. And the CIA is founded by Skull and Bones, and his family served Skull and Bones there for 100 years. So it all goes together, and that's a very illuminating series of connections. We already pointed out that Barrett went to Masonic University.
Yeah, you can read all of this on the show page. Everything's linked. And also have a link so you can go get a copy of Operation Gladio. I urge you to get it. Your eyes will be open, mind blown. And that takes care of today's show, folks.
Thank you, AJ, for having me on this show where we take a look behind what's really going on in the Catholic Church and what the organization is doing. And I hope other Catholics start asking questions. Where are these talking heads coming from? Who's behind them? And why do they always push the narrative in the direction they push it?
Mm-hmm. So please like and share this program. And if you're watching on Odyssey, please like and share it. And share it around so we can build up the credit. And if you're on Rumble, please watch the video and share it. Like it if there's a like button. And that's it. And this is Lord of Militaris Radio TV signing off. Deus Volt.
Deus Volt.